I don't know if I can see you. All right, we're gonna get started. Hopefully you can see this. We are Blake and Kelly Evans with National Property Inspections. And we're just gonna go over the basics of home inspections today, and then spend a little bit of time sharing more in depth on specifically the roof portion of an inspection, since that is a major component of a house and probably a major concern and budget item for your client. So just to share a little bit about us, so we have Blake Evans. He's our owner and lead inspector. You could just kind of share about yourself, I guess. I don't have to talk for you. My bad.
Yeah, a little bit of background. Right out of high school, I was in the Army. And then I worked at General Motors, and then we started this business.
And then Blake also has 8 years of construction experience in HVAC and roofing. And then I'm married to Blake, and I'm Kelly Evans, and I am the office manager. And I'm a former middle school teacher and then special education teacher. And then Blake and I have 2 daughters. And when they were born, I left teaching to stay at home with them and then started this with Blake. And then we also have Josh, who is a licensed inspector with us. He also brings 8 years of construction experience as well. So we'll just go ahead and get started. We're just trying to increase some knowledge of the home inspection process. We know that to become a realtor, you had to, study for a test with lots of information, and maybe inspections weren't covered on that. And since that is important part of the transaction, we just want to be able to share some information to be able to help you and help your client. And then we're just going to use the terms home buyer and client today. But just know that there's several different kinds of inspections. I think the one we commonly think of is when someone purchases a home and they get an inspection, but you can also have a post-purchase inspection. If someone waived their right to an inspection after they close, they could still get an inspection to just have their own peace of mind and information about the property. There is a pre-inspection. So if someone's listing their home and wanted to have a pre-inspection done, that way then they don't have to go through the inspection process potentially, or if they kind of have their own to-do list of items that they could fix beforehand. Is there
Yeah.
anything else?
No, I think that's
There's also with new construction, there are draw inspections. There's commercial inspections, so lots of different ones. There's also add-on services too, like radon, mold, water, things like that. And then, while home inspections are optional, they are referenced in most real estate purchase agreements, maybe not so much right now, when houses are really hot and you're trying to sweeten the deal. But a home inspection can increase a buyer's confidence in making an offer and confirms their decision of a purchase. And then it can complete the sale. The information leads to knowledge, which leads to understanding, which leads to an agreement. So doubt and uncertainty are 2 potential roadblocks for a home buyer for completing a purchase, and a home inspection just helps with that. And then recommending a home inspection to your home buying clients greatly reduces any liability that you could have in respects to disclosure issues with the property's condition. And it just provides a level of disclosure to the buyer that's not really possible otherwise. And then no matter what inspector that you choose to use or your client chooses to use, this should be their goals. It should be to share unbiased information about major components and safety issues, to discuss repairs, maintenance, or safety issues, and then to move the sale forward. So they will, inspectors will recommend repair, replacement, and monitoring conditions when deficiencies are identified. Do you want to add anything?
no, I mean, that's pretty much how it's broken down.
And then kind of what an inspection is and what it is not. So an inspectors will determine whether the system and components are of acceptable condition or if there's deficiencies that need brought to the attention of the buyer. Inspectors will recommend repair, replacement, or monitoring. And then it's not technically exhausted, meaning that inspectors don't employ every possible means to uncover deficiencies in a home. The inspection is an observation. It's a visual inspection where they are using a limited amount of tools and equipment to assist them. So they don't dismantle anything or disassemble anything. So for example, we're not gonna pull like trim off of baseboards or cut around things to like get into the walls to look at electrical. So that's what they mean by technically exhaustive. And then it's one of those things where a home inspection is several $100s, where we like to say we know a lot about a little. And then if you wanted to have like an HVAC person come in or a roofing contractor come in, and if you had to have all those major components and pieces come in, then you would be looking at several thousands of dollars. So it's just a cost-effective way to get a snapshot of the major components in the house. And then just like you as real estate agents have to adhere to guidelines, inspectors also have guidelines that they have to adhere to, and we call them the standards of practice. And those are required. If you're interested, it could be a little boring, but you could go on and look at under here, you can see ASHI or InterNACHI. You could go on their websites and be able to look up the standards of practice for an inspector. And you're always welcome to ask your inspector which of those that they follow. And then why are there limitations? So industry standards of practice for home inspectors were designed with both the home buyer and inspector in mind. And so it was just recognizing that a certain amount of information on the condition of a home at an affordable price was an important consideration in deciding how comprehensive a home inspection should be. And they realized they just wanted to strike a balance, like we talked about on the previous slide, between the amount of inspection information to provide and then like the fee to be charged. And then inspectors may employ tools and equipment to assist in their inspection. There's a gas detector, which can identify, you can kind of explain more.
Yeah, I get to detect like gas leaks with your furnace and water heater. And also if there's any leaks in the exhaust to any of those appliances.
And then the moisture meter.
The moisture meter detects if there's any hidden moisture. Say we suspect that there's like a basement wall that's drywalled. If we suspect that it's wet, you can put the moisture meter on there and it'll actually read the moisture content of that drywall and behind it.
And then being in Indiana, sometimes the weather conditions make it so where a roof is not walkable. So we personally have drones that we put up and fly over the roof to be able to look at the condition of the roof. We feel like that's a major component, like we talked about at the beginning, for your client, and it's a major cost if there's something wrong with it. So we always drone the roof. And I mean, if there was snow, if it was snow covered that day, we can wait till it thaws and come back out. And we also have a crawl bot to go into crawl spaces to be able to just kind of get shimmy into those spots. And then there's, just so you know, like common documents that are provided at inspection. There's a pre-inspection agreement, which then it's a legal contract between the home inspector and the client. And so just like any contract, the client would want to read it to its entirety. And it just goes over the scope of the inspections, the standards of practice followed, and the fees. And then there is a home inspection report is another common document. And it should be clear and concise and include photos. And then this is kind of just inspection protocol. So it's important to know ahead of time who will attend the inspection and when they should attend. Sometimes you have clients that they only got to look at the house, for their walkthrough that you took them on. They made an offer, and now they're wondering like, oh man, we want to replace flooring. How much flooring are we going to need? We should measure that room. And so we don't mind during an inspection. And you'd want to ask, the inspector that you're working with. But we just like to know ahead of time if your client is wanting to do that and come for the whole time. But we don't mind it. We understand that they only get so much time in the house. And so that's kind of a good time that they can come. But then if they're not doing something like that, we recommend that they come at the last 30 minutes of a walkthrough. That way the inspector had the entire time to be able to look through the property and be able to give them a final, almost like verbal report at the end. We encourage walkthroughs. It's nice to be able to show them something in person in the house versus just on the report.
I'm gonna say it may look different in person versus you getting a picture or video of it.
Yeah. And that's okay. We know things come up or work comes up or they're out of town. So we know that that happens as well, but we definitely encourage walkthroughs. If possible, this is their home. This is one of the biggest decisions that they'll make in their life is to purchase a house. And so we don't mind being able to walk alongside of them and answer all their questions. And then it's kind of up to you as the real estate agent if you would want to come or not. If you are being mentored by uh another real estate agent, it might be a good idea to ask them their choice on it or why they choose to come or why not. We have realtors that want to be there with their client. We have realtors that come at the beginning and just pop in for a little bit, but have their client come, or we have realtors that don't come to the walkthrough. So that may be something to ask if you have a mentoring agent, maybe their take on that. Something that you can also ask for when your client's getting an inspection done, and we have realtors ask this of us. Some of them want it, some of it don't. You can also ask your inspector if they see something that is going to be like a major defect that they call you prior to the walkthrough. That way you're not coming to the walkthrough blindsided with your client. So it kind of works as in maybe they notice that the HVAC system isn't working and it's 20 some years old, so it's probably looking more like it would need potential replacement. If that conversation happened with you ahead of time, you would be able to then possibly get on the hold with your HVAC guy. And when you're going through that part of the walkthrough and your client kind of looks at you and you're like, oh, hey, I already talked to so and so, they're going to come out and take a look at it. And then what should a home inspection report be? So it should be clear and concise. It should adhere to the industry standards of practice and cover all the major components. It should be delivered in a timely fashion. We guarantee 24 hours. If you would need something before that, I mean, we know that sometimes things have to squeeze in last minute, so we can always do that for that. And then it uses the terms acceptable, marginal, and defective. And then this one's an important one. Who owns the inspection report? It's the client. So we have to get their verbal consent to be able to deliver the report to you, their agent. We've literally only had one person the entire time not do that. So that's not usually an issue, but I think that also gives your client peace of mind that when we're in there with sometimes the seller stays home, sometimes their listing agent pops in, sometimes they call and say, hey, how did that go? But just know that we can't disclose that information because the report does belong to your client. Kind of going backwards though to this, I'll go back to this though, but you can disclose with their consent some of the information in the inspection report if it helps when you're writing your inspection response. So just know that you can, but it gives, I think, a little bit of peace of mind to the client that we're not sharing that information. And then home inspection reports may vary, and I would love to pull this up for you, but I'm afraid if I did that I would not be able to get back on the screen. But this is a QR code. You could, if you're watching this recording, you could pause it and you could scan it. So you could see a format of what our inspection reports look like. Ours are more interactive online, but there is a PDF version too. I would say you could probably speak more to this interactive version because this is kind of when we like to go through it a little bit in class with agents.
It's kind of it's a live report. So if you can click on things, you can click on like the summary, the whole report, or just click on like major defects or something that's defective. Versus having to scroll through the whole PDF and find that. You can just click on the summary page and that'll give you every defect that was, I guess, called out in the report. And then also if we do like a reinspection, that report itself can be updated with the reinspection report right in it, and it doesn't have to be a completely separate PDF report.
So then I see a couple different things here. Then you're not having to feedback through and be like, oh my gosh, did I look through the right report in my emails when it comes to that inspection response? And then the other thing is, then you're not having to go through, you know, that 30, 40, 50, 60 page report highlighting the things that you need to include. It's kind of, you can look right at the major defects list there and kind of talk through that with your client. Another thing I would encourage you to do is ask a mentoring agent how they use a report to respond to their inspection response. We've had people say then that they kind of use the same wording that's in the inspection. That way you don't have to reinvent the wheel of how to word what you're going to put on there. And so I just think that they offer a wealth of knowledge for you on how to respond to the inspection report.
I would say some people, or some realtors will screenshot the section of the report and then send that in their inspection response.
Oh, yeah. Yep. And if you're not sure who to reach out to, I don't know, like Frankie Dials here, Nancy Weaver, Derek Daniels, Brittany McCowan, they would all be great, great in helping with that. There's probably more too. And then characteristics of a good inspector. And so they would be trained, thorough, and unbiased. And then courteous and professional, have the necessary tools and equipment. That's important, right? And have good oral and written communication skills. That's one's really important. The whole thing that we say is we're just here reporting the facts. We're not trying to scare anybody out of anything, but we're also not trying to sugarcoat anything as well. Like, it's just there to report the facts. So that good written and oral communication is really important when it comes to your walkthroughs and your reports that your clients get. And then obviously you'd want to make sure that they're insured. And if you're listing a property with a client and they say that they want to see the E&O insurance of the inspector, I just like to always say this, like, we've had people ask that before. So if they ask you that, like, don't panic, you can ask for that. Just trying to help you guys navigate this or think of questions that your client might ask. And then your home inspector should adhere to industry standards of practice, inspect readily accessible systems and components. That one can be sometimes a challenge. If you're the buyer's agent, you don't have any control, your client doesn't have any control, and we don't have any control to make sure that the seller has things readily accessible. So we do have, if you want, always feel free to reach out to us. We do have a way to prepare your home for an inspection that we can always give to your clients if you're listing a home. But for example, to be able to reach the access panel or the electrical panel, we've before come into places where there's boxes stacked up in that, or boxes stacked up in front of the attic access stairs. So those are important things to make sure are available. And if they're not available, we cannot move the stuff, but we are willing to come back and do a re-inspection. And we personally don't charge for that. We don't think that that's fair to you and your client. They didn't have any control or say in getting that stuff moved. And then they should have E&O insurance. And then this is just kind of inspections reduce complaints and liability. And so many claims involve hidden damage that wasn't visible. However, sometimes the inspector can miss a defect. So this graph just shows that just over 30% of E&O claims are structure related. And then between 10 and 20% are roof related, and just over 10% are water intrusion. And so this is just showing claims that get sent into liability on an inspector.
And just to be clear, these aren't our stats.
No.
They're just a general stat for the home inspection industry.
Yes, this was found by the Foundation for Real Estate Appraisers. So yeah, these are not our stats at all. Good point. Educating the home buyer. So most home buyers know little about construction. This is kind of the time in this slideshow where I say, what does your client usually ask you for? They're probably asking you about how many bedrooms they want, that they want open concept, what kind of flooring they want. They might make a comment in the house is painted red, and they're like, oh, we'd have to repaint that. But a lot of them aren't looking at how old is the roof? How old's the air conditioning? Is there any water staining happening on the ceiling or on the floor? And so that's where an inspection can be helpful. And then just being able to answer those questions confidently will put their minds at ease. And that's where an inspector is helpful too, to be able to answer those. And then informed buyers are more satisfied and can make or better anticipate and plan for maintenance and repairs. I don't know about you, but I always just like to know the information and know the facts. And I think that that feels good to them and not being blindsided by things. And then client satisfaction. So this is just kind of just saying it depends on many factors. And then the condition of the property is a big one. So home inspectors can improve client satisfaction just by home buyers can often set themselves up for disappointment by expecting that their homes will be near perfect condition upon move-in. So I think having that inspection and having that inspector being able to be the one to kind of communicate that creates this open lines of communication for you and your client and just giving them that satisfaction of just having the conversation. And not because you're doing anything wrong, but just because they can kind of just set themselves up with their own expectations sometimes.
And I'll add a little bit. So a lot of first time home buyers, I'll say they have the expectation that has to be perfect and that the seller needs to fix everything. And if it's a 20-some-year-old house, it's not going to be perfect. And even brand new houses sometimes aren't perfect. So we try to explain a little bit. It's like, hey, this is part of home ownership. This is maintenance. This isn't necessarily like, something that the seller's responsible for. It's more so as you live there, this is just general home maintenance.
And something that this is a tip that was shared with us from I would say like just a really successful real estate agent in Nebraska. He said what he does to set his clients up for a home inspection. He says, hey, listen, their job is to go in there and pick everything apart and uncover anything that they can. And he would relate back to his own inspection. So he'd say, in my house, when they did an inspection, that's what they did. And it was, a 50-page report. And so we kind of set them up with that expectation too of knowing like they're going to find things that are going on. And this is about how many pages it is. If you've never had a home inspection done, you could say the ones that you've had, your clients have had, and share that experience. You could look over some reports with another agent. I think that all that sets the expectations for them too.
Yeah.
And another thing is an inspection is not pass or fail. We've had a lot of clients call us and be like, did it pass? And we're like, what? So it's not a pass or fail. That's not how it works. So that might be helpful to tell them too. And then home inspectors also play a role in client satisfaction after they move in. So it's not, hey, great, we did this inspection for you. We wipe our hands of it. See you later. But if they find something in the house after they move in, we've had people call us. We've even had people call, for example, when we've had a snowstorm. And if you can explain this better.
The furnace flow was blocked with a snow drift.
Yeah, so we've had a client and an agent call us and say, hey, I know on the inspection report, can you tell us where that's at so we can dig it out? So we're here just like you are afterwards to help in any way we can. And then a good inspector will explain the scope and limitations of their inspection, make sure the client reads and signs the pre-inspection agreement, and they'll invite the buyer along for the inspection, and they'll explain how long the inspection will be, the cost, and when the buyer can expect their report. And then a seller should secure their pets, turn off security alarms, and remove obstructions to furnace and water heater, electrical panel. And then some inspections might require specialists. So these are add-on services, and we are able to do all of these. We kind of have the belief that this is known as a really stressful time for a home buyer or a seller. And you as an agent get to play many roles for them, sometimes therapist, or so many other hats that you didn't think that you would wear. So we like to be able to say that we can take this off their plate and be a one-stop shop for you or your client. And so I guess why it might require a specialist, for example, a pest inspection would be required on a VA loan. And then an inspector should leave things the way that they found them, verify that the furnace or AC is running, and return the thermostat to their original setting, turn off lights or water, and make sure that the doors are locked. And then who should receive the report? We kind of talked about this earlier, so I'm just going to skip to the next slide. And then to avoid any misunderstandings by your client, here's some things that you could do. You can ask your client if they have any concerns or questions about the home prior to the inspection and after the inspection. Prior, make sure that those things get looked at and talked about with your client in the inspection. And then after, then it can, any conversations or confusion can be handled and clarified prior to closing on a home, because you don't want them to have buyer's remorse. And then you can invite your client to ask the home inspector any questions. We encourage that. We've actually had real estate agents then say, hey, can we have a 3-way call with you and the client? And we're more than happy to do that. That kind of just takes some of the pressure off of you.
Well, and I always encourage people at the walkthrough, they might not think of a question, but once they see the report, they may have questions, and I tell people, please call. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Yes, we would rather do that than get a call after closing. And then you can assist your home buying client by these things. So like making a repair request to the seller. And then you can kind of read through those. My like very formal like request plea would be, if in your inspection response, it was agreed upon that repairs were made, please, 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 please make sure that they really were made. They could verify it with receipts of the work that was done, with pictures. You can have a re-inspection done. But having that done before closing is so important, because at that point you can still negotiate or have the conversation like, hey, this wasn't repaired, or this wasn't repaired accurately. But once closing's done, all documents are signed, there's really nothing that your client can do to make sure that those got done. And I feel like that's probably, you might be listening to this and be like, oh yeah, like, of course that would happen. And you would be surprised how many times they call us afterwards. Are all home inspection findings of equal importance? Usually not. And that's where you'll kind of see that it's like marginal. You can kind of talk through that.
Yeah, so there's the acceptable, marginal, and effective, and it's kind of broken down into different categories. And we color code ours. Red is obviously like a life safety, hazard or defective. Orange is marginal, which is like a recommend repair or replace. And then blue would be a maintenance item, that's basically part of owning a house.
And then I'm just going to end this slideshow and pull up. We have one specifically for roofs, and we're just going to share a few minutes on this. So the roof is obviously a major component of a home. And so did you know 40% of building related problems are directly related to water intrusion and damage? And you might be asking, well, how's that related to a roof? Well, a lot of it happens because of a roof. And so, do you want
I would say the roof, it's, if you think about it, you look at any house, it's the house's like first line of defense. It covers everything within the home. Yeah, when it comes to shingles, you want to make sure that nothing's loose, dented, or missing. And then another one that a lot of people, it's hard to tell sometimes about how many layers there are. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it's a code thing or if it's just like a, who regulates it, but usually 2 layers is the maximum. If there's 3 layers, they have exceeded the maximum weight on that roof. And when there's multiple layers, that top layer will deteriorate faster because of excess heat and just, conditions on the roof.
And then a tip that Blake likes to give is when you're going and looking at houses with your clients, or you can even just do this as you're driving around now, is look at, especially in neighborhoods, you could look, or subdivisions, you could look at the roof compared to the other roofs. Can you tell, you can kind of explain a little bit more into
Yeah, like
this.
if you're driving into the subdivision to go show, a specific house, look at the other houses as you're pulling up. And if they look, they look newer and the house you're pulling into has like an older 3-tab, like flatter roof, it's not as like textured. Chances are, it's probably older. They still do install 3-tab roofs now. But more so, it's the architectural shingles. So if you see, that roof looks not as nice as the other ones pulling in, chances are it is gonna be an older roof on that house. And then roof penetrations are key area. I know you guys probably aren't gonna get up in the attic and look, but a lot of times, skylights, roof vents, you wanna make sure everything like that is sealed, and I would say those are in like flashing areas where walls and eaves and stuff meet. That's probably one of the most common areas that we see is, chimney flashing and those areas where flashing goes bad. Gutters, if there's any gutters missing, damaged, corroded, or poorly attached, that can lead to like ice damming and, underlayment problems. And then also when the roof isn't drained properly with gutters, all that water is draining next to the foundation and can cause damage to the foundation over time, but we can get into the foundation section another time. And then I kind of hit on this, the areas of flashing missing or improperly installed. Flashing it's such a simple thing, but over time it wears out, needs replaced. And it's one of the most common areas for water intrusion in a roof.
And then, or if you're like me and you're like, wow, that's a lot of things that could potentially go wrong or need to look at to make sure that the roof is intact. Like, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to sit down with you guys here in the office or over coffee and look through some reports and be able to show like, well, this is a good one, or this isn't great, or like this is not so great. Or if you just have any general questions about inspections, we'd love to be able to help. We're pretty passionate about making sure that we're educating agents on the process, and we're here to help in any way that we can. So thanks for watching. Have a great day.
Thank you.